Warriors from all of time have been collected and brought to you. This is Heroscape.
For many of us tabletop gamers, our journey into the world of complex board games and tabletop board gaming began with the introduction of Heroscape. Whether it be the classic figure collection of whatever era you can dream of, the vibrant 3D hex terrain that popped off the tabletop, or maybe the rules on our card structure that made the game so approachable. Heroscape was an amazing addition, let's be real, to many of our game shelves or toy boxes. However, this game, like any other product, could not have existed without a great pitch, imaginative ideas, and a pitch of luck. In order to be greenlit by Hasbro not once, but twice. 3 times? Anyways, today, I'm excited to walk you through the fascinating history of the most creative tabletop game ever made, in my opinion, and provide a glimpse of how this idea came to life in the first place. Before we begin, however, I would ask, if this interests you, be sure to like this video so we can reach more people who might be curious about this amazing game. And if you know any more tidbits about the origins of Heroscape, I would ask that you please contribute down in the comments. It really helps the channel a lot. It really helps to feed that algorithm, get more people who might be interested in Heroscape tuned in. Now, let's begin. Our journey begins with an idea, one which later would be cultivated by game designers Craig Van Ness, Rob Daviau, and Stephen Baker, among others, to construct the intricate components of Heroscape. See, each of these designers had already their own wealth of game knowledge and design experience from other projects and inspiration that they've had in the years before creating Heroscape. In particular, Stephen Baker was a designer for many games in the 90s, such as HeroQuest, being a very important game for board gaming in the industry as a whole, as well as other games like Battle of the Dinosaurs and Axis and Allies Pacific. Craig Van Ness and Rob Daviau had previously worked together to develop and produce Risk 2210, and Craig Van Ness had also worked on Strategio Legends, among other games. Now, these games may seem kind of random on their own, but going back into the eventual idea of Heroscape, we can see how all of these pieces begin to come together to create a greater whole than each one of their pieces alone. Now, the most important of these, arguably, is
HeroQuest.
A game that not only shaped the future for Heroscape, but also just the design landscape for board games as a whole. On top of giving the Warhammer IP a much greater springboard to jump off from and giving them a version of it in general stores, it also had a bunch of call signs of Heroscape that we would consider to be rather fundamental to how the game operates. Of particular interest is the fantasy minis that came with the game. While Milton Bradley, who developed the game, could have just used tokens, right, to represent the characters in HeroQuest, they actually decided to opt for the much more expensive option of plastic injection molded miniatures to sell with the game. Now, these miniatures had the effect of, even though they didn't have any added gameplay significance compared to perhaps a token, it turned out that they were a key part in making the game extremely popular and interesting to people wanting to maybe get into the hobby or just passing by the game on the shelf. Now, this caused all sorts of games in the years since, right, to resort to using miniatures to populate their board games, to make them look more realistic and more interesting, and we see maybe some of the negative side effects now if you go on a Kickstarter and purchase a game for $150, and now you just have 100 plus miniatures that you have to paint. But in any case, HeroQuest was instrumental in bringing the idea of miniatures into the mainstream board game landscape, which Heroscape would later down the line eventually use to incorporate that into their main game design idea of creating a board game tabletop game. What I would say is even more interesting, though, is the dice that were used in HeroQuest. Because these dice consisted of 3 skulls, 2 white shields, and 1 black shield, which, interestingly enough, are very close to the eventual Heroscape dice, which are 3 skulls, 2 shields, and either a blank or a general symbol. Going to show some of the original roots for the fundamental D6 system, which would eventually find its way into Heroscape. Going on to a more interesting note, however, Battle of the Dinosaurs, which I will say because I cannot pronounce the European name, is an interesting European title, and that some of the most popular Heroscape figures have a direct ancestor in this game. In fact, the entire game was structured around these little orc miniatures riding dinosaurs and getting into combat and fighting each other, which rings a pretty familiar bell for any Grudge player using either Grimnock or Tornock, 2 orcs in Heroscape who ride differently sized dinosaurs. On another note, the Axis and Allies Pacific game that I mentioned earlier is also worth mentioning. If nothing else, then it is the game that came out a little bit before Heroscape, that was designed by one of the game designers and features World War II miniatures, which we then see in the first master set, Rise of the Valkyrie, in both Sergeant Drake, an iconic piece of Heroscape lore which has shown up time and time again, including in the latest re-release of Heroscape, and the Airborne Elite, one of the most popular squads in the original master set. However, in terms of direct comparison, Risk 2210 shares many more similarities to the Heroscape universe than Force Axis and Allies does, being just World War II and World War II miniatures into Heroscape. Designed in 2001 by Craig Van Ness and Rob Daviau, Risk 2210 features a lot of ideas that would later be incorporated into the lore and setting of Heroscape. For one, the year 2210 is notable in Heroscape, where many figures such as Agent Carr and Osamu draw the background from this time period. Additionally, the Common Squad Microcorp agents take their name and design directly from Risk 2210, which had an underwater area named Microcorp, and it even had agents featuring very similar underwater gear that the Microcorp agents have. While some other 90s and early 2000s games definitely influenced the design space for Heroscape, such as Battle Masters, Battle Ball, and Shogun, the last one that I think is worth looking into today is Strategio Legends. While the game of Strategio is rather different from the asymmetric gameplay of Heroscape, this fantasy version of Stratego actually introduced many characters which would later return in the hex-based game, including Sir Gilbert, Cyprian Eisenwine, the Aubrian Archers, Empress Teova, possibly Taylord, and even a King Mygel, who shares the name with the tomb the Mygel in Heroscape resides in. You can also see, based off the box art, that we have a very similar, if not identical, font that was used in the Legends keyword that we would eventually see in Heroscape. As we can see, many of the varied characters in Heroscape have the backgrounds etched in some previous project by each of these game designers or by Milton Bradley's catalog of games, or both. What this goes to show is that around this time, these designers had the worlds in their head that they had developed and given thought to, that they felt could be given a new life. The question then was how to integrate all of these different ideas into one or more designs. And the genius that resulted from these ideas is that each of these worlds could coexist within one another, given the proper hook. Enter Valhalla. Now, while the flexible time period of the game, as well as its similarities to the likes of HeroQuest, had been established, this in itself was not enough to convince the higher-ups of Milton Bradley and Hasbro to invest in the game. Obviously, especially given the high cost that would be necessary in order to develop all the molds, the figures, and the paint ops for such figures and molds, in order to even construct the game in the first place. So, In order to pitch the game, a video was thrown together that would sell the scope of the game to the higher-ups at Hasbro. This video itself actually resurfaced very recently as the designer for the video happened to mention it on the Heroscape subreddit while asking an unrelated question.
But this is the first time that war has destroyed time itself.
This pitch video was constructed from a number of other CGI videos in the early 2000s era that immediately rang some nostalgia bells in my head. Included is footage from video games and trailers for Rome Total War, Battletech, World of Warcraft, possibly Medal of Honor, and a couple others. At the end of the trailer, we have the first appearance of the Heroscape logo. With an unfamiliar font, and the X in the middle constructed from two swords, potentially as an early indicator of selling the idea of a mass battle type of game. The text, "The Final Battle of All Time," that appears right underneath, gives an impression that the tagline for the game, "The Battle of All Time," which was changed later on very slightly, was still integral to the game from the very beginning. From the very first pitch of the game, that was how they sold it. Overall, while nothing of gameplay was shown in this video, which you can see in full for yourself in one of the links in the description, this trailer shows the vision of the game of Heroscape. The feeling one might have while playing with the limitless armies mashed together from various historical and fantastical settings. This video was successfully able to show the higher-ups at Hasbro the feeling that could be conveyed from this type of game. This video must have paid off because the team eventually did get the green light to draft an initial test or beta version of the game. An image of this beta version actually still exists, and it provides some interesting insights into some other inspirations for the game. First, while the terrain, dice, and order markers are all present, certain features like the figures are colored differently from the final versions. Note the blue memorying as an example, which is a model that I would honestly love to have in that paint scheme. And the cards are rectangles instead of the iconic hexagonal shape. But it even seems from this concept of basic and master versions of the Heroscape cards that we can see today were still present from this beta version, as we can see both many of the cards giving this basic font of some of the basic values of the figures, as well as the card on the rightmost side having some extra text and being oriented in a different orientation to allow that text to fit. The logo is nearly finalized as well, even if the colors are different. Also of note is the HeroQuest skeleton used on a couple of these cards, and the Warcraft 3 poster used as the box art for the box. From here, the beta version of Heroscape continued to be iterated on, and after enough time and testing, the first master set, The Rise of the Valkyrie, finally emerged and entered store shelves in 2004, giving many of us cherished memories of battling as Vikings, samurai, and elves against the likes of dinosaur-riding orcs and aliens. While from here, I would love to say that the development of Heroscape went without major issues, as many of us know that could not be further from the truth. But that is the story for another day. So, if you would like to know more about the likes of cancelled mounted dwarves, be sure to stick around for the next part of the history of Heroscape. Thank you for watching today's video. I hope you enjoyed, and if you did, be sure to leave a like and a comment on this video. Be sure to share it as well with all your friends and with people who may be slightly interested in Heroscape but don't know too much about it yet to be willing to commit. I've been your host, Josh, and until next time, keep on scaping, and have a good day.